Hello, everybody. Hello. Good morning, and welcome to Vermont's North Country Chamber of Commerce Legislative Breakfast here at the lovely Eastside. I'd like to thank all of you for showing up, our legislators, members of the media, and especially the Orleans County Board of Realtors for sponsoring this event today. So thank the Orleans County Board of Realtors. And we have Peter Fina here who will give a couple-minute talk, and thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Again, welcome everyone. The Orleans County Board is proud to host and sponsor this morning's breakfast, so please enjoy the coffee and nosh. Our focus today in hosting is really hopefully to talk about topics that impact all of us around our housing situation, keeping our housing that we own affordable through perhaps not such large tax increases on property. Also building or through legislation, giving the opportunity for housing to grow in the area, allow for building. So that's really, from the Orleans County Board of Realtors perspective, our focus is how to keep, through the best of our ability, help people find the American dream, buy their first home, keep the American dream, stay in their home. With that, I want to thank you. I'll turn the floor over, and we'll get this morning's breakfast with the legislators going. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. Our first speaker will be Senator Sam Douglas. He's the clerk on the Senate Committee on Health and Welfare and the clerk on the Senate Committee on Institutions. And getting coffee at the same time, so he's multitasking. So, okay. Thank you.
Morning, folks. So I have quite a bit of a report here just because I've been writing it up for a while now. But I wanted to say one first thing. Being, I think this is our 13th week that we just completed in the legislature this year, and I think I've learned one thing that's pretty good observation, I think, on my part is when you're a legislator, you're about 50% a used car salesman, 50% a call center operator, 50% a lawyer, and 30% is realizing that the numbers aren't adding up. So, little levity there to start this off. It wasn't a very good joke, but it doesn't have to be. So, so as Dan mentioned, I serve on the Health and Welfare Committee, and my first priority on that committee, no matter what we're talking about, no matter what bills we're working on, is North Country Hospital, Copley Hospital, and NVRH. We all are probably very aware of the Oliver Wyman report that came out under Act 167. That was very distressing to many of the people in our communities. It was distressing to me, and we've seen continued effects of that spilling out across the legislature and in my committee. So, in everything that I'm doing, all the bills I'm voting on in that committee, and in our discussions, I'm trying to make sure that local access to health care is the biggest thing that I can do. Because we can't lose North Country, which we're not going to. We can't lose NVRH and we can't lose Copley. I'm equally distressed about hearing about that the birthing center at Copley might be coming up for a vote for closure, which I'll get to a little bit further down my report. So getting that out of the way, the number one thing that we've worked on in health and welfare so far this year is our committee bill. There are parts I like, parts I'm ambivalent about, and then parts I strongly dislike. Through the process, it started very, very, very long, very big, and we were able to whittle it down to about half the size, and then we were able to whittle it down a little bit more, and then add in some bits that I was particularly happy to get in there, like a reporting back feature. It's a very big bill, and it does a lot of things, and I would say it's it's kind of an earthquake to the healthcare community of how hospitals are operated in conjunction with the Green Mountain Care Board. It includes reference-based pricing, global budgeting, as well as trying to integrate a statewide EMR system, so electronic medical records, to really get the whole state to kind of line up under the same system. And I think that's great. I think increasing efficiency is great, but what I don't think is great is giving too much regulatory access to an oversight that's going to come in and tell the hospital how to do its job. If we're asking the hospitals to trust us, I think we need to trust the hospitals a little bit on the back token. So that's one thing that I wasn't very happy about during the conversations, is that we weren't really including the hospitals as much as I thought we were. We were having them come in and maybe testify like once a month, if that. And in my opinion, they should have been there. They should have been testifying at the table every single week instead of just piping up occasionally from the sidelines, because they're the ones that are providing our health care right now, and they should be the biggest voice at that table. So, and the bill also just tries to, it does build on Act 167, which is trying to bring transformative change to the healthcare landscape in Vermont by bringing more services out of hospitals where it's a higher cost of care. And I hope the bill will do that. I'm not too certain it will do that, but I certainly hope it will, so that we have more people going to primary care for lower level issues instead of going to the emergency room if they stub their toe. That, which is a hyperbolic example, but that's on purpose. So another bill that we worked on, I'm only going to talk about 2 bills because there's been about 15 or so, and I can give anybody updates on those if anybody wants all those. But another bill that I was fairly pleased about was the birth centers bill. I had some concerns about that, which were mostly waylaid by the end of the process. And I'll definitely thank Dr. Stewart for coming and testifying on our committee. That was wonderful to have him there over Zoom. But that bill, what it does is it allows freestanding birth centers to be erected in the state, and it also lowers the certificate of need process, which is kind of your review process before you can build a hospital or permanent additions to your hospital, or any healthcare facility, as well as replacing depreciated equipment, things like that. And so they're trying to lower the certificate of need process on the birth centers to make it easier to open a birth center, especially in areas where you have maternity deserts. So I mentioned Copley is going to be having a vote on whether or not they're going to close the birthing center sometime after May. Copley is situated right in that little desert, right between North Country, Burlington, and VRH. So if they close the birth center there, you're not really going to have any place to give birth in that central part of the state underneath Orleans County. So the birth center bill, I hope, will go somewhat to address those issues and address those deserts and provide other opportunities for people to give birth. Not everybody wants to give birth in a hospital where it's very clinical. Not everybody wants to give birth at home. Birthing centers kind of provide that middle ground in between. So I think it was a pretty decent bill. I had some concerns, but they were mostly waylaid. So another couple things. So on our committee, we have the cell phone ban for schools, that bill. That bill was originally referred to the Education Committee, but we had asked that it got sent to our committee so we could start discussing it, because the Education Committee was very, very busy at that point and was supposed to be working on a lot of other things. So we took that bill with the expectation that we were going to work on it, and our chair said we would, and we haven't. So I've been advocating hard to get that bill at least up for consideration, because we have seen just a tremendous outpouring of support from the state in the State House. Even the bill's not even hasn't even been taken off the wall yet, and we're still having advocates come into the building and holding rallies and marching through the halls. And it's something that a lot of our schools want, our school districts want, a lot of our teachers want it for sure. And the phone's become a really big issue. So I've been advocating for that bill, and I was a co-sponsor of it as well. And we're recently taking up a bunch of House bills that passed over the crossover deadline. That includes the federal 340B drug pricing program. And Tom, I'll be meeting up with you at some point here, and we'll talk about it. As well as reducing violence against nurses and hospital staff, and then, of course, a bill to eliminate the motel-hotel program. We also may take up a bill that looks to follow other states' examples and ban artificial dyes from school lunches, which I see no issue in doing that. So, And then one last thing about health and welfare. So I have a bill, S99. I talked about it here for the first time back in, I think, January at a different speaking function. And that bill, introduced with Senator Beck from Caledonia County, it's a study, and normally I don't really like studies, but I went to the Joint Fiscal Office and I asked them to put together a report for me and Senator Beck on the welfare benefits cliff, which is where, like, if you get like 2% increase into your income, you lose like 100% of your benefits. Which, you know, if our benefit system is supposed to be a safety net, if it's supposed to be helping you get along, get back to work, be able to support your family just a little bit more, just a little bit of extra assistance, it doesn't make sense. If you get a raise, that's a good thing. Why are we punishing you by taking away 100% of your benefits and, you know, removing your ability to pay for your food, pay for your fuel, et cetera, et cetera. So that cliff has been a big problem for a long time. I'm definitely not the first person to notice it. So I went to the Joint Fiscal Office and asked them for a report. You know, how can we come to a reasonable solution? Like, you know, what programs do we have? Where are the funding sources, et cetera, et cetera? And they said, sure, I'll get back to you in a month. 2 months later, I got a response saying this was way bigger of a task than we thought it would be when we initially agreed to it. Our entire office got in on this. It was a big deal, and there's a lot of rabbit holes. So they asked specifically that we introduce a bill to create a study on it through the Agency of Human Services. So normally I don't like studies because I find that we tend to ask for them about topics that we already know the answers to. We just like to have another answer on paper, and I don't think that's a very efficient use of state dollars. But in this case, we needed a study for this issue. There are so many different benefit programs that we have with different funding sources, and it's very difficult for the state to track them all down because we have that many. So that bill, to try to address that cliff, which I think is a very large issue, especially for our more low-income families. That bill was not taken up before crossover, so I missed the deadline. So I've been negotiating to get that bill, the language out of that bill, copy and paste it onto another bill that we have in committee right now that's similar. The head sponsor of that bill in the House is happy for that to happen. My committee chair seems to be completely agreeable, and we're currently waiting back for the Agency of Human Services to come back and let us know what their thoughts are on the language of my bill. So hopefully I'll be able to get that negotiated out, to get that attached, so it'll be able to happen this year, because otherwise we'll have to take it up next year and meet the crossover deadline on that particular bill next year. So institutions, thankfully this is a much shorter portion of my report. Institutions right now, we are only handling, how much time do I have, Dan? Okay, all right. On institutions right now, we just got the capital bill over from the House. Right now, the capital bill is hovering around $125 million between the governor's proposed budget and the House proposed budget. Kind of the average is about $125 million, and that includes like courthouse repairs, prison repairs, bridges, grants, all sorts of other state infrastructure projects. So the House version, and this is particular to Newport, the House version removed funding to renovate the Newport courthouse, as that project has kind of been paused, and there's still the conversations are ongoing, so the money is not necessary in the budget this year. So, and if those conversations continue and the project's kind of unpaused, then we're going to be able to add that possibly into the Budget Adjustment Act next year. So. My key bills, so S45 is the one that I've really been pushing heavily. My approach to putting in bills is putting in fewer bills and not just tons of them that get shotgunned out and that I kind of lose track of, so I try to be very focused on a couple. And so S45 was one of the only bills that crossed out of the Senate this year. There weren't that many, and is currently sitting in House Judiciary. It passed out of Senate Judiciary on a 4-1 vote and then passed out of the Senate on a 25-5 vote, and I had 22 co-sponsors on that bill. I'm particularly proud of that one, and we've been working really, really hard, especially Representative Nelson and I, who has his hand over his face. We've been working really hard on that one. He introduced a companion bill in the House for that, and we're really hoping we can get that around this year for our farmers. It's been a decades-long process to try to get similar legislation passed, and we're hoping that we can keep carrying the torch on that one. Dan? Okay. All right. I still have like another 2 pages.
Thank you, Senator Douglas. And then, here we go. Next up will be Representative Mike Marcotte. He's the chair of House Committee on Commerce and Economics. He's on the State Workforce Development Board and on the Special Oversight Committee on Workforce Expansion and Development. Thank you, Mr. Marcotte. at least.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming out today. Thank you to the Chamber and also to the Realtors for sponsoring this. As Dan said, I chair House Commerce and Economic Development. I've been on that committee since I started 21 years ago. Worked my way up to chair. I think the things that we're doing kind of fold right into what the Realtors are talking about. We will be starting to look at a tax increment financing bill that's come to us from the Senate. Although we don't do housing in commerce, we do the tax increment financing, which was a piece of the housing bill. So we already have tax increment financing. TIF, as it's known, is a tool that municipalities can use to provide infrastructure that then will spur development in certain areas that they want development to happen in. And so what happens is that real estate values are frozen at their current rate, and as development happens, those values continue to grow and grow. And instead of turning those dollars over to the state education fund, the municipality is able to keep 70% of those funds to pay down the bond that they take out in order to pay for that infrastructure. So we're looking at something that's been talked about for a number of years called project-based TIF, which is just looking at one certain project and having the ability to either bond for that, just that one project, so you're not having to go out and find, a whole downtown area and projects that you would like to see built. So we're going to start looking at that this week, and hopefully are able to move that through. We're looking at this project-based TIF, and there's different iterations of it. There's something that came to us from the Vermont Economic Progress Council. They called it Spark. There's another piece that Let's Build Homes put out. That one was called HIT. Now this one that's come back is another acronym called CHIP. So we're going to look at Spark, HIT, and CHIP and see how we can put this all together so that it helps our small communities, because TIF is very difficult for a small municipality to use as a tool for development. And so we want to create something that is much easier for small municipalities that may want to build, may only need 5 houses in a certain area, opposed to 200 or 300 homes. So we're looking at that. That'll probably take us a week or two to develop that. And we're working very closely with our House and General and Housing Committee on how that all will work. And we're looking also in that for tax abatement instead of going to bond, which would be so much easier for municipality, but we have to make some changes within tax abatement as well. And then we're looking at assessment districts. So if there's a certain district in the municipality that they want to develop, and they do go to a bond, it's only those people that are in that assessment district that pay for that. Right now, the way the law reads is that the whole municipality votes on it. And I know in a municipality in Chittenden County, a small one, they had the ability to put a wastewater system in that would benefit their downtown area. And the people in that and the businesses in that district wanted that to happen, but the town voted on it and they voted it down, even though they were utilizing ARPA funds. So we're going to look at that as well, that should we have housing developments in certain areas and people in those areas are going to pay for it, they should be the ones to have the say of whether or not that happens or not, if they're going to bond for it. I think other pieces that we look at, and I think Sam was talking about one, is the benefits cliff. We've been looking at that for years and years, and we provide a lot of dollars for training, especially low-income people, to be able to get training to better educate themselves. When you better educate yourselves, you should be getting a better wage. And we've taken testimony in the past in my committee where we've had people come and testify that they've taken college courses, received a degree, and gone back to work and received the raise, and then found out that they were going to lose more benefits than they're gaining on their pay increase, and they don't take the raise, or they leave the job and get another job that pays less in order to be able to help their family. That's not right. And we've got to create a system that if you're on benefits, has your pay increases, your benefits drop a little bit until you get to a place where you're self-sustained. That's the way we should be operating. Unfortunately, the system that we have, we want to bring people up, but it really doesn't allow them to move up. So I'm going to stop there. I know there's others that want to talk, and I'm sure there's a lot of questions that people want to ask. So thank you.
Next scheduled is Representative Labor. He's on the House Committee on General and Housing. General, here you
go. We'll start off with a correction. I'm not on General and Housing. That was last term. Environment and Fish and Wildlife. Good morning. It's nice to see such a good crowd here today. As I stated, I'm on Environment and Fish and Wildlife. We discussed very little on Fish and Wildlife, but we did get into the environment. So the first bill I'd like to talk about is SH 86. It's known as the SALT bill. It may be listed on the website as the toxin bill. It has to do with the purpose of the bill is to decrease the amount of road salt in their application process during storms, before storms, and in the middle of a storm, based on various weather, temperatures, and moisture in the snow. This is primarily aimed at Lake Champlain, but Memphremagog cannot be forgotten. It has to do with the impervious amount of ground, rooftops, water runoff that affects the amount of spread salt in the spring when the rains come that gets washed into the earth, into the brooks, streams, rivers, and then ultimately into a lake. And the DEC has been monitoring the bodies of water targeting Lake Champlain and Memphremagog. Although the salinity level is not to a crisis point yet, it's easier to fix something before it starts. So that's the reason for the bill. Their cost factors to this bill are significant. It's going to require, your state is already doing it, but your municipalities and your commercial contractors have a plow and a sander in the back of their trucks. They're going to have to get training certified. And we'll be modeling it the way the committee is looking at it right now with help from New York and from New Hampshire, as they are already doing it. They have a training program. The current cost is about $400 per registrant. You have a senior registrant on the crew, can train all the other drivers. That's not the hard part. The hard part is getting the measuring equipment. Not every town has scales. So when you're looking at the equipment, it's probably going to be portable and mounted and behind the truck. That's a $15,000 addition to the piece of equipment. So they're looking at options. The bill has not come off our committee yet. However, we will be sending it to the Senate, and I'm sure they're going to end up modifying it one way or the other. 2035 is the due date for municipalities and large commercial contractors to have coverage. The salt sheds now are going to have to be covered, and they can't be within 100 yards of a water source. Some towns do not have that ability yet, so that's going to be looking at either a waiver or moving it, or towns having to buy other land. That also covers salt that's mixed with sand. Sand is probably going to develop into a new important product. Salt runs off, sand doesn't. So if you're spreading salt on the perimeter of a lake, like, well, take mine, Seymour Lake, Route 111, you're throwing sand after a storm, during a storm, it's pretty level road, and it's really close to the water. Maybe that can be decreased. That's a state highway. Maybe they could switch to sand there. Sand, by the way, is recoverable. You can go back to the old town sweepers and pick up 40 to 50% of the sand, bring it back to the sand pit, and mix it with the following year's sand. Salt, you can't recover. So that'll be coming to the senators. H-484 is another bill we had. That's on fertilizer application, and we quickly realized we were out of our realm, so we're going to ship it over to Richard Nelson's. But it's in, there's a, well, there's a lot of differences I'm learning in limestone. If you're going to sweeten up your soil because it's too acid, you can say, well, we're going to spread some lime on it. Well, there's all kinds of salts to lime. It's not all just calcium carbonate. But they can deal with that. Act 70, or H70, I should say. This was read by Mark Higley before our committee. The purpose of the bill is to include current use and use value land as conserved land for people who are property owners, 26 acres or more. They can conserve their land by going into land use or current use. While the operative word that everybody's having a problem with the conservation is land use and current use are not in perpetuity. Every 10 years you can remodel your policy, your current use, you're required to, at fairly considerable expense depending upon how much acreage you have. There's a lot of them in the state that are due this April 1st. So they've already been turned in. It's every 10 years. It's managed by the forester, a hired forester. Then it's checked by the state and county foresters, and you'll finally get your approval if done right and conserved right, and follows the AMPs for harvesting. Harvesting will be controlled. I have several portions of my land that I can't touch until 2035. That's conservation. If I wanted to have a development there, I got to pay the 10% tax to get out of it. So if the current use value on that land is $300,000, you're going to be shipping out 30 grand just to put a house on it. Decent bill, just like to have it called conserved, because every time you renew it, you're conserving it for another 10 years. And if you want to get out of it, you're going to have to pay for it, so the state wins. H-342, this bill is for the protection of personnel and personal information of public servants. What does that mean? Well, judges, there's public servants. Law enforcement is public service. It's for the protection of the people in the prosecution department, the law enforcement officers, and it consists of blocking or redacting personal data. So those individuals who want to find out about who hung up a jury or who they didn't like did the prosecuting, they won't have easy access to their address, their phone, or their emails. It'll be redacted out. But it does not cover jurors. And that's, a trial can be the most wonderful trial in the world, but if a juror hangs it up, that juror can be intimidated and is being intimidated. I was sorry that that didn't get into the bill. It has been passed and it's gone to the Senate Judiciary. They can have plenty of time to fix it because there's not much wrong with the bill. H-162 is a request for the repeal of the 3-acre stormwater rule. This is a wicked bad bill as far as I'm concerned. You've got impervious surfaces of all kinds. And your rooftop, the rooftop of Walmart, the rooftop of the school, that's all added into the square footage for the count of the surface area. Anything greater than 3 acres is going to be subject to the stormwater rule, which means permits. And those permits are onerous and expensive. There's a family that came in and testified before us. They're part of a 2-stage development. There's a stage, 30 houses up above them, a road that goes in between them, and then south of that is another 20 houses. They just got their letters in October saying they were out of compliance with the 3-acre rule because of driveways, roads, rooftops, and so many dwellings. That's a $300,000 fix. You have to have hydrologists go in there. You got to measure the water flow after a storm. They have to dig cisterns, put in holding tanks, and all of that go to a settling pond. Not too happy with that one. We got a lot of testimony on that. None of it favorable, of course. Yeah. 674 sites have already been targeted by A&R on this, including 2 that were slate mines. The water never left the property. They had mines, they had water in the mines, and they had silt in the bottom of the mine. But no water ever left that farm's territory or that mine's hole, and yet they're targeted. Doesn't seem fair. H-113, this is the lake in crisis bill. Is Peggy here? I don't see Peggy. She's not here. I call this the Peggy Stevens bill. Peggy has submitted testimony and advocating for the lake in crisis bill. It's not a money bill for the state of Vermont. It's a conservation bill should the lake ever qualify because of poor water quality, pollution from one sort or another, algae, whatever. Should it qualify by the DEC as a lake in crisis, that definition opens the door to financial support from the EPA to clean it up. So you'll be going after some federal monies. It's not state monies yet. Could take a while to clean that up. I think. Yeah, don't believe everything you hear in Washington. I did present a bill. On this lake in crisis bill, by the way, is a bipartisan bill. It was introduced by Woody Page, and I was one of the endorsers of it. And there's 16 of us that endorsed it, and it's still pinned on the wall. But I'm not the chair. I'm only the vice chair. I asked to have it removed and put into action, and that's as far as it got. I've got to change my R to a D sometimes to get things done. Let's see. I think that's it. And I'm just giving you a sample of what goes on in our committee. There's a fare-bearing bill. If I have time, can I talk about the fare-bearing bill? Well, it's a good thing I don't have hair on my back. I'd be subject to trapping. Beaver is now considered a dynamic, endangered species, and they should all be protected. Doesn't matter if it costs your town $1,500 to repair a plugged culvert. Don't damage that beaver. Do not trap him, do not bait him, do not shoot him, do not remove him. That one's stalled right now, but having had a beaver pond that broke 3 years ago, and then seeing the dredging units in Lake Seymour, probably self-explanatory. Thank you.
Thank you. And my apologies that he's on the Environment and Fish and Wildlife Committee. Apparently, stuff that you read online isn't necessarily true. Who would ever have thought of that? But we're opening up the floor to questions now. You're allowed to ask the representative questions. We'll have you come over here and form a line. You're allowed 1 or 2 sentences to lay the groundwork for your question. And I just want everyone to keep in mind, these are your local representatives. So please try to ask them questions that they may be able to actually answer on local issues would probably be the best way. And as always, the sponsor gets the first question. So here's Peter with his first question. Thank you.
I will open it up sort of as a follow-up to my intro. I'll ask the representatives and senators their position on the proposal to expand the non-homestead tax rate, to break it down into different categories. And it's, from my perspective, the negative impact it will have on big businesses, hospitals, small businesses, local country stores, as well as resorts like Jay Peak and second homeowners. So I'll start with that question and turn the floor over. Thank you.
Senator Douglas.
So not serving on the relevant committee for that. I'm not overly familiar, but what I'll say is that, and I've been clear on this, I am a supporter of business, I'm a supporter of JP, and I'm a supporter of the hospitals, and any proposal that's going to make it more difficult for them to operate or make it more expensive for them to operate, I'm likely not going to support. At the same time, we do need to do other things to be able to make sure that we can afford our education and keep our homestead property rates at a reasonable level so homeowners can actually afford to live here. So that's really all I have to say for that one.
Representative Marcotte.
Currently, the bill, this is the education bill. It currently is sitting in House Ways and Means right now, and that's a proposal that they've been discussing, from what I understand, this past week. I know a number of members in that committee that hasn't gone over very well with them. So I don't know where they are with that yet. I assume that they will probably pass it out this week if they haven't passed it out already. I know the chair of the committee last week was out most of the week with pneumonia. So I don't know where they are. If it comes to the floor with those proposals in it, I will vote no on it. I think that our businesses are struggling now, and they're going to struggle even more as things continue to happen. And I don't think we can put any more on their backs right now. Businesses are struggling to get workers as well. And so I think the more that we pile on, we'll start seeing our business community continue to shrink. So I would vote no on that bill if it comes before the House.
Representative Labor.
Although I'm not on the housing bill, there was monies allocated for VHIP, Vermont Housing Improvement Program, and that was for a lot of your homes, older homes that were dilapidated state, some of them not inhabitable, and this was to have that state funding come in and improve and make them habitable. Some of them, and one of my territories is Island Pond. When you look at up on the hill, I think it's called Mountain Street, you'll find many of the older railroad type homes that were large, fairly close together, but they're not inhabitable. They're in dire need of fixing. Well, it's cheaper to fix those older homes than it is to go out and buy land, install septic, install water and electricity on undeveloped land. So there's still money in there for that. I just can't tell you how many millions because I'm not on the appropriations for that process. The other one that has money tied to it was the Vermont Housing Conservation Authority. They're a partner, and they make they partner with other financial organizations that contribute to it, like Vermont Land Trust or Preservation Trust. All of those organizations have some monies, just nowhere near as much as they used to have. But if you can get them to find a piece of land, and by the way, who's the biggest landowner in the state of Vermont? The state. So it seems to me the state should donate a little spot of land and put in affordable housing and even low-income housing in other tracts of land and get those people off the streets. But that takes money. That's about all I know about housing, because I'm out of that committee now.
Thank you. And you're first up for questions. And I also forgot to mention, please state your name and the city you're from, please. Thank you.
Janine Young, Craftsbury Common. S56 is a law to study the creation of an independent office of New Americans. New Americans is a euphemism for illegal aliens. Why are we going to study to have a committee to assist illegal aliens in even housing or whatever when they're here illegally? We should be working with immigration to remedy that situation. I want to know how you voted, because it's gone out of the Senate, and how you would vote if it came to the House.
Senator Douglas.
So as far as I'm aware, the New Americans does not refer specifically to migrants. It also refers to people that are brand new Americans that have become citizens more recently. And it also does other things for language barriers and having translators come in and stuff like that. And this, I voted for it. It's a study. And again, I don't like studies. I'm not a big fan of them. But I saw no real large reason to oppose it. Now, if it was a bill on actually creating the office and not a study, I don't know how I'd vote because I don't have that bill in front of me, and I would have to take a look at it. Again, not big on studies, but I saw no gigantic reason to vote against it. So, especially with language services. So,
Representative Marcotte.
So I guess I'd have to disagree with you, Janine. New Americans, in the context that we look at it, are here legally. They've come over. We've had Afghanis coming over that were part of the New Americans. We've had many from Somalia, other places. So we already have an office for that assists refugee populations that are coming over. In that context, I certainly support it. A lot of these people are here now, they're working, they're in our communities. They're actually becoming good citizens in the state of Vermont, so I would support it.
Representative Labor. can people please refrain from comments on the floor? Thank you.
Immigrants, look around the room. It's all of us. When you look at our background, our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents, other than the native indigenous people, we all are the result of immigration. The good thing about the modern-day immigrants, they have choices. They can come in legally, or unfortunately, some of them want to pay a coyote, two-legged one, and come in that way. That I don't approve. They are drawing down on the revenue, they are drawing down on our spending, and they're drawing down on our culture. If they want to come here, that's fine. Do it legally, pick up the language, and do as the Romans do. That's work. The other side, I have trouble supporting. Give them shelter, yes. While they're in the process of filing for asylum or whatever, we need them. We need them to work where our other populations won't work. That's the short and the sweet of it. Thank you.
Next question, please.
Robert Brosser from Newport here. I'm asking what's the latest on the EV, either vehicles you drive every day or commercial?
Senator Douglas.
Why are you looking over there?
Old age. The question just threw me a little bit.
Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it. So I'm not sure if he's referring to any particular bill or just the overall process that the state is looking towards. I believe it's called the California standard. As that would be implemented, I'm not positive on the dates here. I know our other representatives are more familiar with that issue. It would require us to sell a certain number of EV vehicles per every certain number of gasoline vehicles. I don't support that initiative. I think it's going to be really difficult for people to purchase vehicles. I think it's going to be hard on our companies that sell vehicles to sell them. You know, if we're trying to reduce carbon, it's a wonderful goal, but we have to do it in a way that's going to allow people to actually afford to be able to get from A to B, to help our businesses be able to afford to bring in cars to the area. Without dealerships, without used car lots, you're not, where are you going to get a car beyond just a private sale? So businesses, regular people, they need cars to get from A to B, and if you want to have an electric car, it's wonderful. They're wonderful technology, but we shouldn't force our businesses and take a heavy-handed approach to it. If that was a bill, I would vote against it, but it is currently in effect, so we'll see if any efforts will be made to get that to go away. In the Senate, I believe there is a bill, and I believe I co-sponsored that one, to get us off of that standard. So yeah, that's what I'm answer there.
Representative Marcotte.
Well, this session, we haven't heard a whole lot about EVs. I think we do know that there's been withholding of federal dollars to our transportation, Agency of Transportation, for EV charging stations that would go in around the state. So I think that's slowing up. I certainly would like to see more of an emphasis put on our hybrids. I think they work better from what I'm hearing from people that own EVs and own hybrids, that hybrids really work well here opposed to EVs, especially in the wintertime. I think as the technology continues to grow, I think things will get better, but for our climate, I think they're a little difficult. There's also, I think they're looking at a way of switching to a system where they can adjust the fees on EVs because they're not paying a gas tax, which is used for our road systems and bridges, and so they've been looking at that, but I haven't heard a whole lot of what's going on with EVs this year.
Representative Labor.
I can tell you from personal experience, I have a hybrid EV. I was thinking about going full EV, not a Tesla, a simpler EV. Well, I didn't need a bonfire in my garage. So the truth of the matter is, they're not very practical in coal country. The batteries drop down significantly in percentage of power, pretty much like any other lithium-based battery. And mine, it's a regenerative. I don't have to worry about plugging it in. I'd probably forget to plug it in and never get down to Montpelier on time. So I got one that's regenerative. Step on the brake, you're throwing a charge. Coast, you're throwing a charge. That regenerates into the batteries. I don't get 150 miles per gallon, but I do 50 pretty quickly in the summertime and 40 very quickly in the wintertime. I do get cabin heat. I can anecdotally tell you a story about my seatmate last year. He had a full EV. When he left Burlington, it was about 15 degrees. He backed it out of the garage. He had full charge. By the time he got 12 miles down the road, he was figuring out how he was going to get cabin heat, defrost, and heat. Now he's down to 40% power. He limped into the Capitol an hour late, goes to the cafeteria and hugs the coffee urn because he was out of power. Well, that's not the sad part. The sad part is every charging station on 1 Baldwin Street, where they're all located, were occupied, and they're all the slow chargers. He had to stay overnight so he could get back home the next morning. So that's the lack of practicality of a full EV. I created a bill last year because I was sick of seeing, we're losing revenue because of the gas tax. Lack of purchase. Well, fine, let's do a little math here. They drive 10,000 miles this year, and they go to and they get their car inspected. Well, that's a little computer that goes and sends its data down south to the DMV. Validates the sticker. Well, let's carry that computer chip a little bit further. The garage has already got pictures of your odometer, got all the demographics on you, know what your car model VIN number is, everything else. And this year, when you go in, it's 20,000 miles. So how many miles did you use? You put 10,000 miles on that car. Well, you go to JFO and you find out the lost gas revenue, when you calculate it out on miles per gallon in oil, petroleum-based fuels, I don't care whether it's diesel or gas, comes out to 1.2 cents per mile. Times 10,000, it's a $120 tax bill. Put it on April 15th. Nobody had to be hired. Change the microchip in that little handheld computer. Send it to the DMV like you're doing now, and then send it to the tax department. Done deal.
Where did it go? Hidden on the wall. Next question. Yes.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gina Campoli from Craftsbury, and I drive an all-electric car. And my advice to you all is, if you like buying gas, keep driving your fossil fuel cars. But we've had our car for 3 years. It's a Kia, and it's all electric, and I drive it all over the Northeast Kingdom, everywhere up and down the East Coast, and I've never had any problem. But here's my question. I just needed to say that, because there's been a lot of untruths said today. Those of you who are Republicans, and I think that's all of you, You're aware that what is coming out of DC is going to have profound effects. This is about the state budget.
Okay.
This is about the state budget. I'm talking SNAP, I'm talking Medicaid, I'm talking EPA and that funding to help our lakes, I'm talking USDA. Okay, the question is this, Republicans. What are you doing at the state level to send the message to Washington that this is not good for the state of Vermont's budget? I want to know what the Republican Party is doing. Those of you, okay, so you representatives, I'd like you to talk to us individually about what you are going to do about this impending disaster for the state of Vermont.
If you want to answer the question, you don't have to answer the question if you don't want to.
I mean, I'm happy to talk a little bit to it. Every individual citizen, yeah. I mean, I can project, but every citizen is able to write a letter to the editor. Every citizen is able to write a letter to your congressional delegation. Anybody here can write a letter to Bernie or Becca or Peter. And I think that they've been doing what they see as their part to address that. You know, from a statewide perspective, we don't really have the funds to replace the money in the budget that we're going to lose in federal funding. What I do believe is really important here to keep in mind is a third of our budget comes from the federal government. I think this is a big wake-up call to everybody that we need to be a little bit more responsible in how we're drawing our funding sources. When we create a program, if it's going to have 2/3 of its funding for that program coming from the federal government, maybe we should consider pulling down that program and trying to do what's sustainable on a statewide level. So I think this whole situation, it should be eye-opening to all of us to try to keep things within our means as much as we can and not rely on funding that's not necessarily going to be stable. You know, 50 years from now, we could be facing the same problem if we don't keep in the federal funding. You know, it's not just the current administration, it's every administration. We could get the funding taken away for any reasons, really. So when you rely on what's on here in our state, and if you have concerns about what's going on in the federal government, write letters, send letters to congressional districts, donate to those candidates if you like what they're doing. But here at a state level, us representatives and senators, our voices are at the state level. So please contact your congressional delegation.
Mr. Marcotte.
We're all well aware in Montpelier of the issues that are going on in Washington. We have very little to no input. What I can say as a chair of a committee is that we meet with the speaker and all the chairs meet once a week. And this is a topic that is on the agenda every week of how we need to look at our areas of state government, of whatever we chair, to try to understand what could happen, where we might be able to make cuts in order for the budget to be able to provide for the most vulnerable in Vermont. And when I look at the budget that we passed in the House, there was no money for workforce development. My committee deals with workforce development. We have a huge issue with building homes. We need to train more people in the trades. We weren't able to put that money because we're reserving money in the budget to try to counteract some of the monies that we may lose from the federal government. We can't sustain that very long, but we are looking. And it's not a Republican or a Democrat issue. It's a Vermont issue that we all are taking extremely seriously when we look at the budget and how we're going to make sure Vermonters are protected.
Representative Labor.
Along that line, there are many dollars already committed to education for the trades, if you will, in the state of Vermont. VEC, I believe, is a $3,000 tuition. Am I correct, Mike? VEC, Vermont State Colleges, they have a tuition-free issue for kids coming out of high school. Right. Great. That was a little before my time. In CCV, they also have coursework, and youngsters that aren't in high school, that aren't in college, still have an avenue to go out and get trained in what I would call the blue-collar trades. It's supported bipartisan. There's money there. I don't know if the kids don't know about it. Some things we take for granted and we shouldn't. I went to, I know we're off session on the weekends, but it's not true. I went to along with other representatives in the room, we went to the Vermont Army Air Force National Guard base. And if you don't feel pride in your bones when you leave there, you've probably got one foot in the grave, because it is a beautiful place, and it's a beautiful offering for an opportunity for young persons. And it doesn't matter, male or female. They have job training that is top notch. And if they decide to leave either full-time or part-time membership in the Guards, they bring back to the community a skill factor in electronics, in wiring, in carpentry, in mechanics, in fire suppression. If you saw the fire equipment down there, you'd drool for a long time. That's beautiful. And that's what takes care of the Burlington Airport. Burlington Airport does not have a fire department. It is your Army National Guard. If a plane comes in and it's hot, they got the equipment to put it out in a hurry. It's impressive.
We have time for one more question.
Age 54, S21, that's the cell phone free schools. And it's a very bipartisan issue. And our students are in a critical mental health situation. And it's directly related to cell phone use in our schools. So I would like to know where our representatives stand on that and what we and you can do to move that along, because it was initiated to take place July 1st, this July, to have schools make their own policy that's fitting for them for cell phone schools, cell phone free schools. So I would like to know quickly where you all stand, and I have a good idea, and it's a very bipartisan issue, and what can be done, even though you're not on that committee, what can be done to move it along, to get the, as Larry Labor said, pin it off the wall. Move it along.
Thank you. Sam, Senator Sam.
You can call me Sam. Yeah, so as I said earlier, I'm a big supporter of that bill. It's something that our teachers want across the board. It is definitely a bipartisan bill. I was a co-sponsor of that bill in the Senate, and I am on that committee. And I have been asking, when are we going to do this? You said we're going to do this. When are we doing this? And unfortunately, you know, the majority party down there, they have a lot of influence on what bills are taken up, which bills are not taken up. And I'm really hoping that the chair of my committee will take up that bill. Obviously, we're past crossover. We can't do it this year. But if we take testimony on it this year, we take it off the wall, we start working on it a little bit. Next year, at the beginning of the year, we'll already have some progress done on it, and hopefully we can get that out quickly. But I don't know, there's a lot of other bills that I know that my chair wants, so we'll see. But I haven't stopped advocating for it, and I'm going to continue to, of course.
Representative Marcotte.
I can tell you there's strong support in the House. We've been looking for a bill that we could attach it to. I think by what I talked about and then learned about Friday, that I think you'll see it happen this year. I've been a supporter of cell phone free schools for at least almost my whole time in the House. I think some of the issues have been school boards were afraid of backlash from parents and students. I think it's time that we, the legislature, take that on and provide that legislation to eliminate cell phones in schools. I know I've heard from teachers that teach in a cell phone free school that they'll never go back to teaching at a school that allows cell phone use. So it's important. I think it's important for the mental health of our kids as well as their learning abilities as well. So I'm fully supportive of it. I just one thing I forgot to say, and it concerns schools, is that our Career Center director up here, Gwen Bailey-Rowe, she's just been appointed by the governor to the state colleges or Vermont State University Board of Trustees. So that's the first time in a long time that we've had, number one, someone from the kingdom sitting on the board, but we also have a Career Center director to bring that perspective to the board. So I think I just wanted you all to know that too. I think that's a great thing for us.
Representative Labor.
I wasn't kidding. I have 32 pinned on our wall. I don't know if they're going to move. Cell phones. You know, they're a wonderful technology, but they're very distracting, and they aid bullying. I do not believe cell phone needs to be in a classroom, period. You have overhead intercom systems. You have modern technology that doesn't involve a cell phone. Pick them up on the door on the way in, pick them up on the door on the way out, if you feel you need them. The pushback I'm getting is from parents who need to be in contact with their child all the time. Well, the parents is a distractor too. Don't blame it just on the children. Cell phones, how can a teacher teach if they're constantly involved with put your cell phone away, stop texting, or stop your bullying, take a walk to the principal's office? Well, they're involved in mental health counseling and they're involved in discipline. How can you teach? They need a break. So as far as I'm concerned, they may be wonderful pieces of equipment, but they don't have a place in the classroom.
Well, thank you all. So this concludes the legislative breakfast for today. Sorry. Well, it's 7:30 to 8:45.
All through, I want to know if the clean heat standard is being repealed, to whom it may concern.
Okay. Okay, you twisted our arm, Paul. Okay?
Yeah, so it looks like no, this year probably will not be, which I'm not happy about. It was one of the big issues that I ran on. It's one of the issues that I'm passionate about. Across state government, we've heard that program just will not work. Great intentions, wonderful intentions, but we've been told it just does not work. I'm in favor of repealing it, but unfortunately it's looking like that's not going to happen this year. Again, as I mentioned, the majority party has a lot of influence in what bills are and aren't taken up. And they don't seem very interested in having that go through. So, no, it doesn't look like it's going to happen this year. So.
Senator Marcotte. Representative Labor? Yeah.
When the House fails, when the Senate fails, we have to depend upon the governor. He's got a veto pen. I hope he uses it. This is a bad bill. It follows California. Vermonters can't afford the clean heat standard.
So now I'd like to thank you for the conclusion of the legislative breakfast and thank our sponsor, Orleans County Board of Realtors, and the Eastside, the representatives especially, for coming here. And I'd also like to let you know the next one will be April 21st, and it will be sponsored by the hospital. So please come here in 2 weeks. Okay, thank you all for coming. Thank you. Bye.